Life really is this journey to developing a level of self that allows you to listen to inner guidance that directs your choices versus being controlled by outer guidance that controls your choices. Now, right there is the difference between fate and destiny. I'm convinced of it. Hi, everybody. Today, I'm going to do a follow-up video from the video that I did last week, which was on life purpose. I've never met anybody who hasn't, in one way or another, asked the question, for what reason have I been born? And that has a tie-in to what is fate and destiny? What are you fated? Are you fated to something? What is the difference between fate and destiny? And for me, these two forces are like archetypal currents that constantly run through the thread of our lives. They are never not present in everything. I think one of the ways to enter this topic is through choice, is to understand, you know what, I don't know how to turn that off. And I'm afraid that if I start fiddling now, I'm going to lose this video, so just bear with me. I'll get this mastered before the next video. So, with fate and destiny, why I want to focus on choice is because I think that's the mechanism, the critical mechanism that unfolds whether the next force that enters is more directing the next moment of your life, the next event of your life, toward destiny or toward fate. You know, choice is the most significant power you have. People will say, no, love is the most significant, but before you get to love, you have to choose to be loving. Choice is everything, absolutely everything. There's nothing more significant than realizing that every choice you make is actually an act of creation in your life that changes everything, that has the power to change everything. Even the choice of the words that you use to interpret what you're hearing, like to say, well, should I take this personally or should I take it impersonally? I mean, everything is choice. It is the power of life. It is how you direct the life force through you toward others, whether you withhold grace, whether you withhold love, everything is choice. Which brings me to fate and destiny. Because and I base so much of how I've come to understand us on my years and years of working as a medical intuitive, and then working in, issues of health and healing and the mysteries behind why people don't heal and then eventually the quality of choices people make, and eventually realizing how that life really is this journey to developing a level of self that allows you to listen to inner guidance that directs your choices versus being controlled by outer guidance that controls your choices. Now, right there is the difference between fate and destiny. I'm convinced of it. And I don't think I'm off the mark too much, because in all spiritual traditions, and so we got spiritual traditions, but also in the dynamic of health and healing, the quality of choices you make and how you discern, the operative word discern, what would empower you, is so rooted in your capacity to trust yourself over what's happening in your world. So I want you to imagine that fate is what happens is the events, is that you trigger fate, shall we say, when you make choices based upon what you think of as your history, based upon what other people are thinking. I was just in a conversation, just honestly, hours ago, with someone who we were talking about Italy. And I was saying I was going to do a workshop in Assisi, and so we started to talk about Francis and saints and all that. And she said, "Oh, it's one of my dreams is to go there." And I said, "Well, what's stopping you?" Well, I just, I can't, and I've got to worry about this. And I said, "You have to worry?" I said, "Did you hear what you said? You have to worry?" She said, "Well, I just worry about like what my daughters, and I worry about this, and I worry about that, and I worry about this." And a quick conversation with someone is no place to launch into a class on fate and destiny. I mean, not that I'm incapable of that, but I realized that is a psychic wheel that we get into, where we have a number of excuses and narratives in our head as to why we cannot follow what our higher desires or instincts or guidance is directing us to do. And so what is taking place in that type of thinking is that rather than listening to just go, take 1 week and treat yourself, take 10 days, just go. Your world won't collapse in 10 days. Just do this for yourself. Instead, what a person does is they look to their history. They look to mistakes in their mind that they've done. They look to other choices. They look to imagined consequences if they did something for themselves. So they look in that direction. And it's that system that they use to calculate, to make their decision. And you think you're making a choice, like I'm making the choice not to travel right now, not to go. I'll just deny myself another trip, or I'll deny myself this or that. But in fact, what you're doing is you're turning over that part of your life to fate. You're fated to experience the consequences of not paying attention to your inner stamina, to your inner guidance, to not paying attention to everything that's directing you. Instead, you are referring to influences from the outside world, influences from your past, imagined or otherwise, fears that you nurture, the anticipation of horrible things that might happen, may never happen, could happen, would happen as a way of punishing you if you in any way indulged in something that you would enjoy. And the consequence of that is fate. So you are fated to experience Italy through a book, Italy through an Italian restaurant, but never go there yourself. Never go there yourself and open yourself to an adventure that you have dreamed about but won't let yourself access. The difference between fate and destiny, to just put it in another way, is that fate is what happens when you look to your past, when you look to the influences of other people, when you look to imagined narratives, and you imagine all kinds of horrible things happening if you do this or that or whatever, and you stay imprisoned in that dynamic, and you allow that to make the decision. How often I've heard people say, "You know what? I'm just going to stay with what I have. I just know this," even though they're yearning to do something else. No, I'm just going to stay here. I'm not going to try something new. How many times I've talked to people who said, "I just don't know what to do next." And I've said, "Well, what's the craziest things that occur to you? What occurs to you when you tell yourself, when you let your imagination speak to you. Oh, well, I just dream about this or that. And I said, well, why don't you do something that way? I just can't. They look backwards. They always look backwards. And so they allow the fiction of the past and the control of the past to take charge of what will be created next. Remember, you are an agent of co-creation in your life. Things just don't happen. You have a vote. You have a choice. You have influence in what's going to happen next. You have influence in what you're going to make for dinner. You have influence. You have choice. And if you don't develop a respect for how powerful choice is, if you don't develop this kind of awareness that, choice is really a profound inner force, then you take the choices other people have made, their opinions, their history. Oh, I wouldn't go there. That's da 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 da. You take all of that and you let their choices make your choice. And that's abdicating your power. And so what that's like is like turning your life over to the management of a group of people and to a group of memories and to a group of other people's bad experiences and to a collection of fears. And you're saying to all of that psychic field of energy and influence, you decide what happens to me next, because I am too frightened to take charge of the next stage or even to take charge of the next decision. Destiny is what happens when, look at how many people get off a treadmill, get off a conventional life and decide, you know what? I'm done with that. I'm just going to do this. I'm just going to do this for a while. They're not sure what's out there. They're actually not sure what they're going to do next. They're not sure about anything. All they know is in this moment, breaking free seems to be the best choice. And that opens the forces of destiny. Why? Because you're actually inviting in the new and the unknown. And that automatically starts to activate in you a deeper kind of intuitive gut response, because you no longer have your history to turn to, like, well, I've always done this and I need to this and I've always lived here and I've always worn this and I've always this. You're no longer always. You're now in something brand new, and you have to choose based on a whole new set of influences that bring out different emotions in you, different ideas, different possibilities, and yes, perhaps a little bit of fear, but you got to handle it. And the thing about destiny that's so powerful is that one of the greatest, what do I want to call this? Limitations, indeed a handicap kind of thing that we have, and we're obsessed with it, is we have expectations. And what expectations are is a way of projecting what we want to happen, and we oftentimes rope other people's lives into our expectations. I expect you to do this, I expect this, I expect that, I expect. And not thinking, like, what right do I have to do? What right have I to rope someone in to my expectations of how I want my life to go, regardless of what that means for their life? Expectations are such a handicap. And if you look at events or relationships or really wonderful things that have happened to you and for you and with you, I'll bet you that you'll discover that the majority of those wonderful things came out of the clear blue. They took you by surprise. meeting someone that you just fall in love with. You didn't, I mean, by surprise. Or meeting new best friends or having an incredible encounter. I just finished a workshop in Sedona. And I don't go to my workshops with this expectations that I'm going to meet wonderful people and da 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 da. I go there with the expectation that I better teach and teach well. So the camera's on me when I go. My inner camera is all about me, keeping my eye on what I need to do there. But I don't have any expectations of the people who attend my workshops. Like, I expect them to love it. I expect this. I expect nothing. In fact, I've never done that. I've never done that. It's maybe a grace or something, but I've never done that. And when you have expectations, it's like you send part of you into a situation ahead of time before you get there. And you imagine what you think it should be. And then you imagine how you will enjoy it. And then you imagine this and you imagine that. So you've set up a field, a play field, that doesn't even exist except in your imagination. And then when you get there, if it's nothing like that, well then, poof, right? It's just horrible. And it's usually when you have high expectations of something, how often are they actually really met? Not often at all. Not often at all. And one of the powers of destiny, I believe, and I hope I say this in the right way, is that because you put yourself, or you are put into a situation, or in a relationship, or in even a conversation, whatever, or circumstance, anything that is unknown to you, it's very difficult to take familiar expectations, familiar things, and project that into some place you've never been before. And what that does is it opens you up to guidance, even though you're not aware of it, to synchronicity, to coincidences, to the laws of the universe. Have an extra lubricant in them because you are not jamming them with your expectations, with the way you anticipate something to come out and work out and da-da-da-da. Which is why, all the stories that I hear all the time from people who tell me about, this awful thing happened, and so I was stuck here, or then this happened and that happened. And then the next thing you know, they meet people, and one thing leads to another, and they didn't expect any of that to happen. And the reason it happened so smoothly is precisely because they didn't jam the process of unfolding by putting in their expectations of what they need, what they decided. I need this for my safety, for my this, for my. They took the my out of it. And I think that is part of the power of one's destiny unfolding, is that your destiny has more to do with incorporating the outcome or the well-being of others than you realize. Fate, you're more interested in your well-being, in your safety. But the power of your destiny is that you are oftentimes positioned to have to rely on others, or have to think about others, or have to include others in the calculus of how you make a decision. And that changes the outcomes and possibilities for you. If you look at stories of heroes, what makes them heroes, what makes them people of destiny, if you could call it that, is that they were motivated somehow to put people first. Whether you look at your crazy Marvel characters, which I see because of my nieces and nephews, or you look at the classic Greek heroes, Ulysses and Odysseus, and these great heroes of myth and of life always put others, their actions we're always about the well-being of others and how their choices would affect the lives of others. And it triggers a power of destiny that is not activated when all your choices are about your own safety. It won't happen. Now I'm going to just squeeze this down to the size of a conversation, because you might think, like, where are these threads of fate and destiny? Where are they? I mean, what? And I actually think that they are present in every single moment, in every single choice that we make. Every single one. Think about it. In every conversation you have with somebody, in every decision, in every action, there's always a really positive way you can interact, or a negative way, or a way that even surprises you. Like, for example, deciding, I think I'm going to withhold a negative opinion. If you're somebody who always has to put your opinion in, and usually people who always have to put their opinion in, it's usually critical. They're great at raining on people's parades, or cautioning them, or or warnings, or this kind of thing, and they build it into their conversation. But if in a moment you decided, you know what, I'm just going to be enthusiastic for this person, I'm going to respond very positively and do what I can to encourage them, that is making in a micro choice, you're making a micro destiny choice. Because what you think of, what you are really confronting in doing something like that, even in the tiniest conversation, is that you are choosing to empower another person. And you don't get that by doing that, you're doing the same thing for yourself. You are activating a power in you that maybe has been lying dormant, and that it has a consequence. It has a consequence to your health. It has a consequence to your psychic well-being. It has a consequence to the next thing that happens to you, to what is created next. If you empower others, that creates a very different energy field around you than if you are someone whose life is influenced by choices that limit the power of others through criticism, through judgment, through withholding advice, however we do it. So fate and destiny are actually forces that we live with 24/7. They make their way like little thin circuits of light into absolutely everything, into how we see things, how you get up in the morning and you look out and you might think, because the weather is not your perfect weather, and then you decide, what a horrible day this is going to be. Well, then you fated yourself. You've tossed it into the hands of fate, instead of saying, every day is a surprise package, every day. And I'm alive and I'm healthy and I'm blessed, turning around and blessing the day. And that's the big difference between a tiny moment that you think is insignificant, but it's not. It's because your power of choice is so extraordinary that even you deciding, I am no longer going to curse my days. I'm going to bless each one. How do I know what every day is filled with? How do I know? That changes what could happen to you. That changes how you interact with the day. You have put a very different quality of light, creative light, into the flow of the laws of the universe. Yeah. So, fate and destiny. And I'm going to bring it back now to that in all spiritual traditions, and then even into your health, all of everything directs us to go inward and to really develop faith and trust in ourselves. Faith and trust in ourselves. The two most important mechanisms you can have is faith and trust in yourself. And through that, you then develop a sense of how to make choices that are based on your inner dialogue, and not your history, and not I mean, it's one thing to take your wisdom with you, but leave everything else behind. What you take from your past is your wisdom. Experiences, like, what did you learn from it? Take that with you. You don't take with you how you learned it, or what happened, or your bandages. You take your wisdom. You don't take bandages from your wounds. You just take your wisdom, so that when you make decisions, you make them from a position of why did I make that decision back then? Was I motivated by fear, or was I motivated by courage, love, and curiosity? And if you realize you were motivated by fear, then you can't do it again. You must not do it again. Because you just trigger the same kind of thing. An outcome that's based more on the fates than it is on destiny. There's so much to say about this. It's just such a great big huge bank of knowledge. But I think this is enough to get you thinking about it. And I love teaching this, because there's a class when I did Sacred Contracts. One of the courses was just devoted to understanding the archetypal influences, your archetypal patterns in fate and destiny. Just so very, very rich. And I really do believe that every single person is compelled to want to know, what's the most extraordinary version of my life that I could activate? What's the most extraordinary version? What's the most fascinating? I am fascinated with life, with people's lives. Everybody's life to me is an interesting journey, because I'm fascinated with the choices people make in their lives, why they make the choices they do, and how those choices unfold to the next thing, and what the pattern of co-creation activated in that. And it's been my experience now that people who are terrified to even tamper with destiny, even with the unknown, who are constantly going with the known and what they think is safe, they pay a horrible price for that, because they are forced then to live the highest outrageous potential of their life only through their imagination, only through could have been, would have been, should have beens. But they can't actually activate outrageous experiences because they're terrified of them. Terrified. When in fact, that's exactly what you should embrace, is how bloody outrageous can I make this life of mine? It's not by what you buy. It's not by where you go. It's by how you develop an absolutely outrageous rapport with your creative power, and with your power of co-creation, and with your own sense of how powerful every thought you have is. So that's it for today, and have a wonderful weekend.